Dear students, after we examine the definition and the concept of fiscal policy and its tools, in this lecture we have another topics which are types of fiscal policy and objectives of fiscal policy. Let's start with the types of fiscal policy. Generally we have three types of fiscal policy. Expansionary fiscal policy means in Arabic سياسة مالية توسعية. Contractionary fiscal policy means in Arabic سياسة مالية انكماشية. And neutral fiscal policy سياسة مالية محايدة. The first type of policy is expansionary fiscal policy. According to this policy, government design it to stimulate economic growth and end the contraction phase of business cycle. It is against recession, it is against repression. Under this type, the government either spends more or cuts taxes or both spend more and cuts. According to this policy, government decide either increase public expenditures or decrease taxes, or decrease taxes and increase public expenditure together simultaneously. The idea of the logic behind this policy is to put more money into consumers' hands so they spend more. The increased demand forces business and the project to add job to increase supply. Politician debate about which works better, increase expenditure or cutting tax, and which is preferable, increasing expenditures or cutting tax. Advocates of supply side economics prefer tax cuts to increasing spending. Why? Because they say it frees up business to hire more workers to pursue business ventures. Advocate of demand side economics say additional spending is more effective than tax cuts. Examples include public works project, unemployment benefits, and food stamps. Food stamps اللي هي الدعم related to subsidy. Subsidy is a type of public expenditures that government used to realize social objectives. Under these options, the money goes into the pockets of consumers who go right out and buy what the business produces. An expansionary fiscal policy is impossible to apply for state and local government. If states apply federal system, we have three types of government: federal government, state government, and local government. Under these systems, state and local government can't apply the expansionary fiscal policy. Why? Because this government is obliged to keep a balanced budget. The second type of fiscal policy is what is called contractionary fiscal policy. What is the goal of this policy? The goal of this policy is to slow down economic growth and to reduce inflation. This type of policy is anti-inflation policy. The long-term impact of inflation damages the standard of living as much as a recession. So the government used its tools by this policy to reduce demand. The tools of contractionary fiscal policy are used in reverse of its counterpart of expansionary policy. Under this policy, tax rates are increased and spending is cut. The third and the last types of fiscal policy is neutral fiscal policy. This policy is usually undertaken when an economy is neither a recession nor an expansion. Government needs to, according to this policy, government doesn't need to fight recession or to expand. So the amount of government deficit spending, which exists not financed by revenue, is roughly the same as it has been on average over time. So no change to it are occurring that would have an effect on the level of economic activity. Under this policy, neutral, government doesn't increase public expenditures or cut taxes or increase or decrease of them, because the economic is stable. So this type of fiscal policy is neutral fiscal policy. Let's move on to another point, which is objectives of fiscal policy. What are the objectives of fiscal policy? Fiscal policy has a great number of objectives to realize. As mentioned earlier, unlike the classical theory, fiscal policy under Keynesian thought has become a specific function to perform through it. This was called compensatory or functional finance. On the other hand, traditional or classical economists were of opinion that there would be full employment in the economy and the problems of overproduction would never arise. We have two viewpoints under this title. Keynesian thoughts, which call that fiscal policy has function to realize. On the other hand, the classical version see that this fiscal policy should be neutral and has no objectives to realize. Classical economists like G.B. Tsai confirmed that point by giving what is called the law of market. However, the severe World Depression in 1913 set aside forever the opinion of traditional economists. We can say that the depression in 1930 has put an end to the classical thoughts, economic classical thought. Modern economists, Keynesian, at this time, directed their attention toward the burning problems of overproduction and unemployment. Fiscal policy was used as a weapon to solve both these problems. Different economists have given different objectives of fiscal policy. According to Ms. Grave, the objectives of fiscal policy are higher employment, stability in prices, balance in trade, and increase in economic development. Taking into consideration the overall literature regarding fiscal policy and its objective, we can summarize these objectives as follows. What are the most common objectives of fiscal policy in the public finance literature? Let's move on to that point. Objective of fiscal policy. The first objective of fiscal policy is economic stabilization. This is the foremost of objectives of fiscal policy, which is to eliminate cyclical fluctuation in economic activities and to maintain it at a stable level. The up and down swings in business fluctuations are checked by compensatory action to counteract the fluctuation. Strict steps are taken to control both inflation and deflation, and efforts are made to make the budget more or less balanced over the period of cycles. These objectives is very important to enhance economic stability, to reduce economic fluctuation in business cycles. The second objective is economic growth. This is the second objective, and one is the most important objectives of fiscal policy, which is maintaining continuous upward trend in economic activity. Total expenditures or outlay is increased in depression, but it is not allowed to decrease correspondingly in boom, since stability continues to be the important aim of fiscal policy. Under these objectives, during boom, we can't reduce public expenditure as these objectives, which is growth, is the aim of fiscal policy. The third objective is to break the vicious circle of poverty. This objective is concerned with breaking the vicious circle of poverty and using fiscal policy in a rapid development in both agriculture and industry sectors. Government can use fiscal policy to reduce poverty by using tax policy or expenditure policy. Tax policy can reduce poverty through exemptions and progressive tax systems, and expenditures policy can reduce poverty by what is called subsidies payments. Number 4, objective 4, which is provide for employment. Fiscal policy is considered as an effective instrument in reducing unemployment and securing full employment. Full employment occurs where there is job available for everyone who is fit to work and wants to job at the prevailing wages rates. Number 5, to accelerate the rates of saving, investment, and the capital information. We have very important relationship between saving, which used to finance investment, and in turn investment leads to increase in capital formation, which increase economic growth. 6, to bring stability at prices. Number 7, to restrict monopolies and check the concentration of economic power in fewer hands only. This means that this objective is related to enhancing competition in economic activities. Number 8, to realize balance foreign trade and the balance of payment, which is called external equilibrium of economy. Number 9, to have a rapid economic development in the economy. I would like to say that all these objectives doesn't realize in a specific economy. It differs from the countries. Under developing country or developing country or developed country. This makes us to move on the very important point, which is the priorities of objectives. In case of development countries, the main objectives of fiscal policy is to have long-term stability. In case of underdeveloped and developing country, the main objective of fiscal policy are: number 1, promoting the growth of savings and investment, and number 2, reducing income and wealth inequality, social equity. Naturally, the developing country and the developing country needs to enhance investment and economic growth, beside to also reducing inequality in the means of enhanced social equity. Another point we have, which is fiscal policy and inflation. Inflation causes continuous fluctuation by creating disequilibrium in the economy. What is meant by inflation? Inflation can be defined as continual increase in the price level. The ways that can fiscal policy use to encounter inflation and realize economic stability in the economy are taxes, government spending, public borrowing. The government can use the tools of fiscal policy as taxes, government spending, public borrowing to reduce inflation rate. How government use taxes in reducing inflation? Inflation occurs at the point of full employment or a level very close to it. It becomes highly essential to curtail excess purchasing power of the people at the stage. The money may be used in consumption and speculative investment. In the sense that government use taxes to reduce liquidity available to peoples and hence reduce effective demand. Government can check the investment of speculative nature and also the extra consumption. How government do that? For this, all the taxes should be widened and the new taxes should be imposed in order to check the inflationary trend prevailing in the economy. Government should determine the strategic point at which the aggregate demand should be checked. Taxes should be imposed at this point for controlling the increasing aggregate demand. Simply, this policy aims at reducing liquidity and effective demand and enhance reduce inflation rate. In its role to curb inflation, fiscal policy can use taxation to reduce demand. So the tax should fall on, the burden of tax should fall on those who possess a comparatively higher marginal propensity to consume. What is meant MBC or marginal propensity consume? Marginal propensity to consume refers to increase in consumption as a result of increase in income by specific amount of money. So the government should impose high taxes on necessities and must arise sales tax and should adopt regressive personal tax. However, this policy may be at the expense of social justice and may deepen inequalities of income and wealth distribution. Government may face contradiction in objectives in this policy. The first objective is inflation reduction. The other, how government keep social justice, take into consideration social justice. Another point we have, which is how government use public expenditures or public spending in decreasing inflation. It is suggested that government spending by government on different hands should be cut to the extent that it may be able to contract the increased spending of the private sectors. This reduction in spending should be parallel to raising of taxes so that it might be able to affect the disposable income of the people. If the government reduces its spending, the pressure on the aggregate demand is reduced to the extent and this helps maintaining economic stability. The policy of government regarding reducing public spending, dealing with inflation, can be affected by non-economic factors like political situation, war, and international condition. Government may face another objective that should be realized. This may be against its policy to reduce inflation. Government may find itself to bump more public expenditures in some cases as wars. For example, the immediate post-war period, the expenditures of government is most likely to increase due to various reasons like reconstruction of destructed houses, farms, factory, etc. After examining how government use taxation and public expenditure to reduce inflation, we now examine how government use public borrowing to reduce inflation. Government use public borrowing when it is unable to meet the expenditure by revenue. It will try to meet that by borrowing. These techniques can be adopted to check the extra purchasing power and unwarranted possessions of money of people. So far as the public borrowing reduces the purchasing power of the people, it may be called as an anti-inflationary measure. Simply anti-inflation measure aimed at to absorb excess liquidity, excess purchasing power from consumers, and hence reducing demand, aggregate demand, and hence reducing inflation rate. A high degree of program for public borrowing should be introduced by the government if it wants to check the inflationary policy. Government may use different ways to realize that, which are providing higher rate of interest on saving. Number 2, introducing the compulsory saving scheme. It means برامج الادخار الإجباري. ادخار إجباري imposed by government. Number 3, deferred plan helps in making the consumers to purchase some saving certificates and redeem it when the economy is passing through inflation phase. Number 3 means that government encourage consumer to buy certificate and then redeem it when the economy is passing through inflationary phase. The last point in our lecture is principle of stabilization policy. Stabilization policy means in Arabic سياسة التثبيت الاقتصادي. Make economy more sound, more strong, more stable. Public budget and hence fiscal policy affect the level of aggregate demand and its components. Components of aggregate demand: consumption, investment, government, export minus import, and so on. Change in the level of aggregate demand affects the level of employment and of prices. Like it or not, the budget thus has important effect on the macro behavior of economic and in turn becomes an important tool by which to affect behavior. Moreover, budget policy and hence fiscal policy affect the division of total output between consumption and the capital formation and thereby the total of economic growth. More further clarification, we use national income model to explain effects of fiscal policy and hence budget policy and the macroeconomic variable as income, output, consumption, investment prices, and economic growth. This will be the topic of the coming lecture. Thank you.